Welcome to the Old Loomis channel again. I'm doing a little teardown video of a light that I just received. It's one of the group buy lights. It's an Ultrafire, and it doesn't give a designation on it as to what model it is. It should be the F13. All it says is Ultrafire on one side, IPX7, caution hot surface, and XML U2 on the other side. Okay, it's a single battery light, 18650 or 26650, tail clicky, and there's no lanyard with it. It didn't come with a lanyard. It's just got a snap ring there, it's all, and glass lens and aluminum reflector, XML, supposedly U2, I imagine cool white. Now, one thing I was surprised at, this came well packaged. It came in a box with padding, padding, and the inner box inside that the light itself was in, and it was packaged really well. The other thing that I've noticed here I haven't seen before in a long time is there's a little plastic covering over top of the lens to help protect the lens. I was surprised to see that on a light that is only a $10 light. So I'm going to be doing a tear down and sort of a little bit of a talk on it. Overall, remember this light is a $10 light. It really is in good condition as far as finish goes. There are some nicks and are not big ones, but you can see along usually the typical areas are right on the back edges of the tail cap, especially when it has, sharp ends on there to protect, to be able to tail stand. They usually get nicked here. There is a nick or two on the fins. Nothing drastic. Nothing that really catches the eye. You got to look pretty close. There's knurling. There's some fine knurling on the body and some flats on the body. There's some fine knurling on the tail cap. The head is smooth except for the fins section, okay, where the pill is. It does have a polished aluminum reflector, or a polished aluminum bezel. That might be stainless. I don't know. I haven't looked yet. I'll find out here in a little bit. As I say, it takes. There's no. You can tell there's no grease on the threads. It takes 18650, and there's a adapter in there for that, or 26650. Standard, looks like standard tail cap clicky with a spring, no brass button, just a bare spring. Okay, and you can see that it's held in. There's a brass brass retainer in there that can be taken out to take that out of there. The body itself, again, there's no grease on the threads. Now the front threads, of course, don't have any anno on them, and neither does the inside of the head, so that you have contact there. Okay, the threads themselves are clean. They're a little bit rough. I can feel a little roughness on these threads. They don't seem to be cut super well, but they're clean. They're not damaged. The threads on the rear that are anodized, of course, they're smoother. That's because of the anodizing. The threads in the tail cap are smoother as well. The threads inside the head, again, you can feel a little bit of roughness in there. Steel wool will clean that out. I don't see any nicks or damage. Inside you can see there's also a front spring attached to the driver. And again, you have an aluminum retainer ring that can be removed, I assume, to take out the driver. I'm going to go ahead and take off the bezel here real quick. Looks to be an aluminum bezel, polished aluminum bezel. Glass lens. Some of these Ultrafires have now gone where the lens is below, so it's not going to fall out if the bezel comes out. The bezel is just basically ornamental, is all it is. So you have to unscrew from the head, and hang on one second. I'm at work doing this. Yeah, I'm at work doing this, so you know how that goes. Alright, so this next section from the bezel, this top section, a lot of threads on this right here. but you have inside your glass lens. It appears to be a coated glass lens, and an O-ring up inside. Then we have the reflector. It's a smooth reflector. It's an aluminum reflector. Seems to have a good finish on it. I don't see a lot of defect. I see some real tiny spots on it, but I mean tiny. Excuse me. There's a plastic centering ring in here, and this centering ring is pretty deep. What I noticed is that when the reflector is set down in on the LED, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see that or not, it really is setting very tall. So I think they're using these newer style centering rings that are so deep to quote unquote help direct the light, you know, to not have it quite so floody, but I disagree with that. Anyways, I think we're going to be modifying that. Inside we have a solid shelf in there. It is not a removable pill. It's just a solid shelf down inside with a 20 millimeter XML LED on a 20 millimeter star. The wiring's fairly thin, of course. They never use much more than about 26 gauge for wiring. Have an O-ring seal here. Again, the threads, the anodized threads feel pretty smooth, but usually anodized threads do. The next thing I'll be doing is tearing apart the, getting the driver out and tearing apart the tail cap too. So hang on a minute here. Okay, so I've got the driver out here, and I'll do some regular photos of this driver. It looks like one that I've seen in a lot of lights, so I know that there's probably a little bit of modification we can do to up the amp draw a little bit on it. And I'm going to do amp draws on the stock light here. I just wanted to see, you know, there's enough room inside the pill, well, not pill, but inside the area where you know, a different driver could be used inside. It looks like about, oh, I'd say about 10 to 12 millimeters of space depth in there, and this looks to be like a 20 millimeter driver. Down inside the hole, it looks to be about 18 millimeters in there. And the other thing is really bad, is there's no thermal grease underneath that star. It's just sitting in there. There's not one bit of, not even a drop of thermal grease in there at all. It's just the star sitting right straight on the shelf, and all I did was twist the wires together to snug it up a little bit, and then of course the reflector touches against it and presses against the shelf. It's still not a good deal, but again, it's a $10 light, you know. So I'm gonna go ahead and take some stills of this driver, and then I'm gonna slip this back in, and I'll go through the tail cap real quick and see what that looks like, and then I'll put it back together and we'll do some checks on it. Thanks. Okay, the tail clicky is pretty much, well, it's not a standard, well, it might be if I take it out. I bet it is. Standard tail clicky switch. That's just the housing around it, with just a spring and a rubber boot, and that's the retaining ring in there that holds it all in. So that's all pretty much standard. Nothing fancy about that. Okay, I just wanted to tell you what the amp draws were. The amp draw on high was on this thing with a 26650 was 1.75 amps on high. So that's a little light, you know. I would say maybe it's putting out 450 lumens at the most. I'm sure that once the thread, by the time the thread gets done here, there'll be photos and ways of changing the last mode memory on this thing, because this has high, medium, low, fast strobe, and SOS, but it has next mode memory. So I know there's a mod for changing it to last mode memory. I think there's just a pencil trick to do it. I think we can probably change resistors on it, or change up on this basic driver to change it up to where you have more amp draw on it. You know, I'm going to talk a little bit about mods, but it's pretty simple. I mean, this is a small light. You know, I mean, you pump a lot of amps into it with it. You know, you're going to put a lot of heat out. It's got good finning on it, and this is fairly heavy in this area. The shelf itself is very thin, probably less than a half a millimeter thick on the shelf itself. The anodizing on the shelf doesn't bother me at all. Anodizing is fine as far as I'm concerned for heat transfer. You know, I would just put a copper star on there, like an XML2 and a copper star, and throw in a driver at 3-4 amps and let it go at that. But you know, that's entirely up to you guys what you do. There's enough stuff you know, out there now, Osh Park and things like that, with all the good modders here that have you know, taken of their time to go ahead and put up, you know, drivers and stuff like that, where people can order boards and lists of components and all that kind of thing, that you can make about whatever driver you want to, and there's enough people flashing them to be able to go, you know, get about whatever program you want, and then you're all set. You know, all you got to do is talk to people in the forums. This light is one that I bought. It's not like a freebie light or anything like that. I purchased it, so I'm going to mod it, but I'm going to do a totally different mod. I happen to have a reflex, an old, I think it's called reflex, an old reflex light where the top assembly, the head assembly, where the LED faces down towards the mirror and then shoots back out again. I always wanted to play with one. I got an XML now sitting at home in gasoline to de-dome it. I'm going to change from the stock XRE at about 1.14 amps to an XML with at about 3 amps. I have a 8mm XML star that'll fit down inside of there. I have some copper that'll fit right inside that hole to make a little tiny copper heatsink. I'm going to drill right through out to the outside and run copper wire in there, so it helps to take a little bit of heat back out to the outside. And I think with a little bit of modification I can slip that right inside this head. So that's what my mod's going to be, but that's sort of an oddball thing. You know how that goes. Anyways, I mean, I don't have any problem at all. I mean, I know that guys are going to say, well, you know, with the shelf the way it is, it's a pain in the butt. Yeah, it is. You're going to have to solder the wires onto that LED or onto that star before you put it in there. Put it down in there, and then bring the wires out, and then you're going to have to go ahead and you know, wire the driver up and then twist it back in to get the wires all, you know. I know it's going to be a pain, a little bit of a pain, but it's not like it's the end of the world, you know. It's not like it's something you can't do. It's just be better if it had a removable pill, but I think maybe they changed it around because this will transfer heat a lot better being solid. You know, I mean, your shelf is solid. You get a thicker area in here now. You don't have all the threads where you know, you get a pill turning in, and it's, you know, threads against threads and all that kind of thing. So I think that in the long run, you know, it probably designs a little bit better for heat transfer, but it's just a little bit more of a pain for doing. Nothing you can't do. The only other thing I would do is if I happen to just throw another XML in there, I would drop this little retaining, or not, this little locator ring, and go for a different style so that the reflectors would set a little farther down onto the LED. So I think you get a little bit better pattern out of the beam, but that's just my personal opinion. You know, there's plenty of those aftermarket ones that are thinner than this, or even taking one off another light you've taken apart and get rid of that real thick one, that real tall one, and replace that. And you're really going to need to do that anyways when you put a copper star in there, because the copper star is going to be thicker than this aluminum star is. So anyways, that's about all I got to say. You know, I'll start up a thread on it and let everybody talk about it, and you know, work out whatever mods you want. I think that's probably the best way to go for it. Thanks for watching.